Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first ever podcast episode. We just quickly wanted to introduce ourselves before we get started with the actual podcast to those of you who don't follow us on Instagram or know who we are.
Hi, I'm Daria Hadjisejavadi, and I'm the founder of OSCIE. I'm a sophomore. I created OSCIE because I know that being a teenager, there are so many different things to deal with in life, whether it be social pressures faced in school or just learning how to deal with all these emotions in our minds. And I just wanted to create a program to help teenagers normalize these feelings and deal with things that might not be pleasant in life.
My name is Raha Hadjisejavadi, and I'm a freshman, and I wanted to be a part of OSCIE because I think mental health is one of the most important things.
Hi, my name is Sasha. I'm a sophomore, and I really wanted to be a part of OSCIE because I strongly believe mental health is an incredibly prevalent problem in today's society, and because of all the stress and anxiety from any part of your life, it's so prominent, but a lot of people don't want to talk about it because it has this bad stigma around it. And it's really unfortunate, but I think that the more we talk about it and the more discussions we have about it, and the more people realize, hey, this isn't a bad thing after all, I think that's really important into not only helping the people who are suffering with this, but also just understanding that it's not a bad thing to have it. And I strongly believe that OSCIE is helping that, and I'm super excited to be a part of it.
And of course, I'm Ahva. I'm in 8th grade, and I wanted to be a part of OSCIE because it allows me to help a ton of people. So if you want more information about who we are and what our goals are, you can just go ahead and follow our Instagram or just check it out. It should be somewhere on the screen. But without further introduction, I'm going to go ahead and invite our guest speaker. Hello, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Ahva?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being here today.
Of course.
So as the first guest speaker of this podcast, it's kind of a big deal. So just before we get started, would you like to introduce yourself and your job?
Sure. So I am Amber Emmer, and I teach middle school language arts and social studies, and currently working in the gifted department.
Awesome. So I know with this whole COVID thing, it's like really hard to deal with, even for teachers too. So, as a teacher who's experienced online school firsthand, like teaching through an online platform, what do you think what would you say is like the most common struggle that all age groups are like dealing with right now?
I think just when everything started, so in March when we closed schools down through now even, I think one of the most difficult things is as adults, we're not the best at being self-driven as far as telling ourselves we need to set time aside and stay focused on a task. And so a lot of times that falls to a supervisor of some capacity. And so for a middle school student or any kid, you were taken from being in an environment where you had somebody guiding you and supporting you and watching you and reminding you of what you needed to be doing, and the environment made sense. And then it was almost overnight where all of that vanished, and now you are responsible as a child to stay on top of your schoolwork and not get distracted by all of your non-school things at home, when home was your non-school space. And now it was school and home, and it was confusing. And I know as an adult, when I did college classes online, I had to take myself to the library so that I wouldn't watch Netflix or find myself going and getting a snack every 5 minutes. So I know that was something that I had to do for myself in my 20s, and we're expecting 10, 11, 12-year-olds to be able to just jump right in. You know technology, so just no big deal.
Yeah,
but it is a big deal.
Yeah, and I know there are some like instances where I've had to literally take my phone out of the room and like give it to my mom, like, hey, please take this away from me or I'm not going to be able to get anything done. And I feel like that's sort of something that's going on with all age groups, like even my mom too, with some of her work has like transferred online. So she's had like those struggles too. And it's just interesting to see with the different um, like with school and work, how it's so similar though when you are trying to work and you get distracted by everything.
Exactly. So even me at home, I don't live alone. My husband's there, the cat's there. There's always someone to talk to. So when you're trying to focus on teaching a class and you have all your home stuff going on in the background, it's distracting and you're not as focused and not doing your best. So I forced myself, as soon as they allowed us to come work in my very empty, lonely classroom, just so that I didn't have those distractions and I was able to focus. So I think kids in general, just the having to be responsible for yourself and not knowing how to make sure you were being responsible. And if you didn't see a 0 in the grade book, then everything was fine. Or when you did, then it was overwhelming. So I think it was definitely a struggle. It is a struggle.
Yeah, with like smaller kids too. I know I have younger brothers who are not exactly struggling with online school or having a hard time, but just getting confused by all of the things that are going on. And I feel like it's also confusing for, well, not necessarily confusing, but just difficult for teachers to monitor their students during this time, which, I mean, obviously, I don't know what it's like to have different classes to keep track of and all of these little kids, but what would you say is like the hardest part about having to make sure all your students are on track through online school?
I think one of the hardest things is I can't see what they're doing. So I'm not able to say, hey, Ahva, I noticed you're playing on your phone instead of doing your assignment because I don't see you. A lot of times, everyone has their cameras off. So I don't even know if you're sitting in front of your computer unless I call your name and you respond. And so to not be able to see what you're doing, I have a hard time being able to see where the struggle is. And so I can assume it's because you're not at your computer, or I can assume it's because you're playing games. You have the assignment pulled up, but you don't know how to get started. So you're playing games on your phone. But without being there, I have no idea if that's what's happening or if you're confused by the assignment, but no one else is asking questions. So you just don't ask questions and sit there staring at the screen being upset. So I have no way of knowing those things. And so for me, I'm a people person, and I teach because I love kids and I love being around people and interacting. And with that being removed, I think for me to feel like I'm not doing a job that I like because I'm not with people, and that I'm failing because I can't help kids the way that I want to, for me to feel like that in my 30s, I can't even imagine how an 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old is feeling just with this whole new world and not having 30 plus years of coping skills under their belt. So I think we all as a country have to take a step back and realize this is a big deal, and it's affecting, adults' mental health, it's affecting kids' mental health, and there's nobody that's able to see it. Where when you're in person and you're at school, people can catch on when you're acting a little different. So it's just a big vicious thing that everyone's experiencing and no one knows how to talk about.
Yeah, and sort of transitioning from like noticing changes in mental health in students, how would you say that teachers and administrators could reach out to students or vice versa during like this pandemic about how they're feeling? Because I know personally, if I'm experiencing feelings of like anxiety or just being really stressed out, reaching out to my teachers isn't the first thing that comes to mind, but I feel like it should be because those are the people that I'm interacting with most of the day, and I'm not even really interacting with them.
Now, do you feel that you're not, like if you were in person, do you feel you'd be more driven to go to your teachers and talk to them when you felt overwhelmed?
Well, I think, yeah, I would, because it's more of like a personal thing where you're talking face to face, and through a computer, it's not, you don't get that same feeling of, oh, somebody's here, somebody's helping me. But in person, you can just have a conversation without having to be like, oh, did this person email me back? Are they coming to my meeting? Like, can I talk to them through text? It's just more of a human connection when you're face to face.
I agree.
And that's one of the hardest things about online school, I think, is, like you mentioned before, not being able to ask questions because maybe you feel like if you unmute your mic and say something, people are going to be like, oh, why is she saying that? Or sort of along those lines. But it's just really hard to stay in the loop when everything is digital now.
I agree. And I thought, I know before we ended up all working from home and learning and teaching from home, I know that we at Ingleside, we did social emotional lessons every week. We had a day set aside where we had 45 minutes devoted to talking about coping skills and problem solving and how to build safe, healthy relationships. And we were only able to do that in a safe classroom space. You can't really do that when you don't know what's going on. And you see it firsthand being a middle schooler and all of the social media. You see all the stuff kids are posting. You see all of the stuff that's going out there of, you know, classrooms being recorded and then posted online. And just, you know, more of what's going on between kids than most of us teachers are aware of. And so it's hard to do those types of activities because nobody wants to open up, because nobody wants their personal experiences shared for the world.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I actually miss the most about being at school is those days we set aside for the social emotional learning, because I know a lot of kids were like, oh, this is sort of dumb, like it's for kids, like we're not going to need this. But I found it really actually informational and helpful, especially certain like topics that they talked about, because it was really relatable, honestly, with like the anger management, like especially now, that's really a great thing to be referring back to. And I think if anything, right now is when we need it the most, but it's not, you know, we're not able to do it.
Mm-hmm. And think about, I mean, think of those people who are always, you know, pointing out what a waste of time it is or how dumb it is. Inside, a lot of times you say those things because you don't want to be vulnerable and you don't want people to know that you have those same thoughts. It's like we have this like persona that we have to maintain where we're tough, but there's nothing to be tough about right now. It stinks. It's not good for anybody.
Yeah, that's what I hear everybody say, you know, we're all in the same boat, like none of us are alone. And when we start transitioning to go back to school in person, I know there are other schools who have already gone back or schools who are staying in online for longer. But even then, we're all still in the same little bubble of everything is changing and everything is different. And it's okay to feel, you know, anxious and stressed and overwhelmed because we've never been through something like this before.
None of us have.
Yeah.
Not your parents, your grandparents, none of us have. The last time something like this happened was the closest thing to it was the Spanish influenza back in 1918. I mean, we say some of the flus we've had have been really bad, but we've never had to shut down, you know, entire states, entire cities, the country. The United States was locked out of going to Europe.
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
I know.
Your whole country cannot come in. That tells you this is unprecedented. None of us knew how to handle it. And, you know, you're being judged and critiqued on your instant reactions. And it's hard. And if you're not admitting it's hard, then I don't know what's going on in your head. But share.
Yeah. I know that this has really affected like online learning has really affected my lifestyle. I mean, every day I'm just sort of waking up, getting out of bed, coming to my desk, and then doing my assignments, and then sort of going back and sitting on my bed and just doing nothing for the whole day. But as a teacher, how has it affected your lifestyle?
I think it's not much different than how it's affecting yours. I had a very active lifestyle prior to everything shutting down. I, would come to work, and before I came to work, I would go to the gym and get everything going, and I was up early. And I think I tried to continue getting up early in the beginning in March. By the end of March, I thought there were about 173,000 days in March because it was so new and uncomfortable and awkward, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I was live for everyone and recorded and doing things that I wasn't comfortable with without any preparation or training or notice. And so little by little, I would sleep in later. The gyms were closed, so I wasn't working out. I wasn't going for walks outside because, well, why? And I became a super homebody and watched way too many series on Netflix. And if you can finish a series in a day, I think you have a problem. And I did that so many times that I felt bad about myself, but also what else was I going to do? And so I think it's not just young people that you have to worry about. I have definitely struggled. I am trying my hardest to get back into the swing of getting up early and, getting ready. There were so many days I would come to work in my classroom, but I was wearing, yoga pants and, a t-shirt, and I looked like I was more going to go to the gym than I was coming to teach. And it was because, no one's seeing anything below my shoulders. So does anyone care what kind of pants I'm wearing or shoes I'm wearing? So it became really difficult to feel motivated and inspired to want to go above and beyond. And then once I would get to work, I felt like there was no end because your work is right in front of you. Anytime you're on a device, I can be working. And so then I found myself working, from 6:30 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, and having to tell myself, okay, there has to be a stopping point.
Yeah.
And it's been hard as an adult. So I talk to my family all the time. I don't know how this is for kids, but I know it's bad for me. So it has to be worse for them. And that worries me about, kids' mental health, the challenges that adolescents face anyway, the suicide rates, things like that, where you feel there's no solution, nobody cares, nobody gets it, when in reality, we all are in the same boat. Nobody gets it is true. Nobody does.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't get it, but guess who else doesn't get it? And you cannot get it together. That sounds weird to say it that way.
Yeah.
But you could come together and not get it in unity.
Yeah.
But just you feel so isolated. And for me, I'm not someone who does well in isolation. I like a few minutes to myself here and there, or a day to myself, but we're going on 9 months of a lot of alone time, and it's very weird.
Yeah, and that, I think, just that goes to show that it's not just kids or it's not just adults. Like, everybody is facing sort of the same demons right now. And I know, upon returning back to school, I know I'm nervous because I haven't really socialized like face to face with people. And like you said, 9 months. So it's going to be interesting to see how I've changed over the course of this extremely long break from everybody.
I mean, having to brush your hair every day before you leave the house, like a whole routine, like brushing your teeth before noon.
I know. Like, this might be the most I've gotten ready since March, or since the last time I've seen people in person.
Yeah.
And
so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of going back to school, what are like sort of the common ground precautions that everyone's going to have to take?
So from what we've been trying to do, we've opened all of our elementary schools, have gone back, at least those students and families that have wanted to go back to school. So they've been back in person now through 5th grade. And a lot of the things they're seeing and common areas of, problem solving is kind of what we're using as our example. Elementary schools don't necessarily have the crowded hallways. And you definitely have been in an elementary school more recently than I have, to know that when you're going one place or the other, you can walk in a line, or if you're not in a complete line, it's not like you have to move out of the line of traffic and you're getting bumped everywhere you go. Where our hallways out here get super crowded in between classes. So we have tape down the middle of the hallways to help visually show to walk on the right side. So you'll stay on the right side as you're walking from place to place on campus. They have installed hand washing stations outside. I want to say there's one in front of the cafeteria and one in front of the gym area. And then they've added hand sanitizing stations in the hallways, kind of like you see at the grocery stores and things, where you just kind of walk by, take a pump of hand sanitizer, and go about your business. We are going to have 6-minute passing periods, most likely, just to give you time to safely get to your next class, set stuff down, go to the restroom, do those things, wash your hands, just to allow for those. And then for teachers to sanitize the desks between classes and what that looks like. And so there's a lot that we're trying to figure out. I think one of the bigger things is we won't be lining up in the hallways. You'll be just walking right into your classes. So it'll be a little different to get into that nature of coming in and sitting down and maintaining that social distance, so you're not, standing around in passing periods chit-chatting with your big group of friends because people are trying to get down the hall and then you're too close. Everyone's going to be in a mask, so I've rediscovered how great acne is, because if you walk around campus, we had students on campus all day, so I had my mask on all day in case they came in here. It's going to be a different experience to be wearing a mask all day. And I mean, I guess I'll save money on makeup because I'll only need to, do it from here up.
Only the eye makeup and
Yeah, just do your eyes so everyone knows it's you by, how bright they are today.
Exactly.
But
also with like smaller kids, I don't know how they're going to maintain like a socially distant distance, or like a safe distance, because when you're little, all you want to do is play with your friends and go on the, swing sets and just play around all day with your friends. So it's going to definitely hard for the younger kids too. I think with middle school and up, I think they have a better understanding of like, we need to keep a distance for the safety of ourselves and others, and it's going to be less of a hassle trying to get them to maintain that distance all the time. But with younger kids, I don't know how it's working or how they're going to make it work.
yeah. Well, and I don't want to feel like I'm a prison guard either. I don't want to have to walk down the halls and be like, you guys are too close. Remember to spread out. Like, I don't want to be that person that's like, where is your mask?
Yes.
I want to be the nice face that everyone sees from here up.
From here up. But especially after we haven't seen our friends for so long, it's going to be so tempting to just run up to them and hug them when clearly that's not like safe or even allowed, I think, at the school.
Well, and me training myself not to run up and hug you guys when I haven't seen you in 9 months. I have to remember that I'm supposed to be the example setter.
Mm-hmm. And then sort of branching off into other topics, this is just a little question about, work during online school, but what is your perspective on giving homework, since we're already sitting at home all day, but after school work, what is your perspective on that?
I hate homework. I feel like from having me in person, anything that you were doing at home was just what wasn't finished at school, or like reading things. It wasn't, to me, when you're in class, we have 68-minute class periods. There's no reason that you need more than an hour a day of history or of English or of math. There's no reason that you should be forced to focus all day and then go home and have that too. And so I've always tried to maintain that barrier. I hold high expectations, and if you keep up or you're asking questions, you're going to end up not having anything to do when you go home other than maybe review your notes and kind of keep track of what you're doing. But my hope is that we're not doing that. And I learn sometimes I expect more to be done than is done, and I can see how we're pacing, and I try to monitor and adjust that in person. It's so much easier in person because I can see when students who normally finish things quickly and they're struggling. I know that this is something that's going to take a little longer. We're online, I might think I gave you a 20-minute assignment, and then for whatever reason, nobody has it done the next day because it was a really long assignment, because no one knew how to ask a question or to clarify, that I didn't want you to do some massive dissertation on it. So I think I try really hard not to assign homework. And if there was homework, it was never intended to be, it was homework because you're at home, but it was never intended to be beyond the end of class work time. My whole goal was to get you away from the computers as much as possible, because once school ended at 2, if you didn't need to do office hours and you didn't have questions for the day, I felt like you should be done at 2, and you need to close your computer and you need to go outside and get some fresh air or do whatever it is you need to do for you and not be working on so much. So I think we all needed to communicate better on what we felt we were able to accomplish, and then be kind of open to easing up on what was going on. So, but homework to me is a waste. I hate to say that, there's so many different perspectives on that. There are things you need to practice outside of school, like being able to train yourself to think about, math in a certain way. I never think you need 40 problems to see if you know a skill. If in 2 or 3 you get it, walk away. You're done. You get it.
And I
if
think
in 2 or 3 you don't, then guess what?
Yeah, 40
You're not going to get it in 40 either.
But I think you mentioned like having only about an hour of each subject a day is probably beneficial, because any longer sort of just drags on. But I know with our school, the class periods are increasing, at least for people who choose to go back in person. And I don't know how students are going to cope with longer class periods. But
True, but every other day.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Technically it's less class time, because you have, I think the latest schedule that I saw, that no one can even tell me, so I don't even know how true this is anymore. But if you're having 3 classes a day from 7:45 to noon, say, those, they're longer classes, maybe like an hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but that class you won't go back to for 48 hours.
Yeah.
So when you leave first hour on Monday, you're not going back to first hour again until Wednesday. And so ultimately, should you read when you go home? Sure. Should you review what you did so when you walk into class on Wednesday, you remember what you were talking about 2 days ago? Sure. But should you have to do another hour's worth of work on that Tuesday in between to be ready? No.
And I think it's more, for me, I think what I was trying to get at is just sitting in one place for, like an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 15 minutes, especially since, the guidelines are like stay in your little bubble so you don't spread anything. I just feel like that's going to be hard for a lot of students who have trouble focusing and sitting in one place for a while, you know?
That, you know what, that's a valid point. And I haven't gotten to that part in thinking that way. I've more seen it from the teacher side. So I appreciate hearing that from you too. So from the teacher side, my thought is, oh, well, I only get to see my students every other day. So kind of like with our schedule, our elective teachers that only saw you every other day. Now that's what we're doing. And so it feels very weird in that capacity. And well, how much can I really cover if I only see them every other day and not taking into account how am I making it not miserable for you every day? And I know I can be entertaining and I could be funny and I'm really awkward and that's okay, but how much of that is going to be too much?
Yeah.
And just what activities can we do if we're not supposed to be moving around and we're not supposed to be, you know, having group conversations? How are we going to be able to make that still happen without, you know, breaking that distance between you so that you're still staying safe? And how do we take breaks so that you can, you know, get up and move, but it's not, you know, putting anyone at risk? So I think that's good to start thinking about. And will help me when I'm planning to make sure we aren't doing the same thing for the whole time. We, you know, get up and move. I don't know, maybe we need to like do some Mrs. Emmer says activities in the middle.
Maybe some yoga.
Hey,
I mean,
as long as you're not like licking other people. I mean, you have your mask on, so you're really just licking the inside of your mask, which is very awkward. But no one knows, so there's that.
and another thing,
Unless you're wearing a see-through mask.
yeah, but I think with like online school, at the beginning of this year, everyone started with online school. And in March, when we sort of transitioned, there wasn't really any training for the teachers. It was sort of abrupt and just like you said, overnight. But with this like new school year, how was the training for teachers for teaching on online school? Do you think it was helpful, or was it more of like a, here's the platform you're using, take it and do with it what you will?
So I don't want to, you know, badmouth anyone. I feel everyone is always just doing the best they can. I feel I call it last year, but for, you know, in March when we were finishing up, you know, your 7th grade year, it was very basic and minimal. It was, here is, you know, training on this format. You can use Zoom, you can use Microsoft Teams. Those are your 2 options, pick one. And then here's the training for how you do them. How do you turn on the camera? How do you record? It was very basic. And the requirements of us were not as stringent, I guess, as they should have been. I feel they should have been a little more focused on what we should be expected to do, but at the same time, we didn't really know what we were doing. So how do you expect someone to be perfect at something they don't know how to do? Prior to March, I would have never, ever, ever, ever recorded myself teaching. Never. I had to do it for my student teaching so I could send it to my college advisor. So the only people seeing the video were myself and him, and I was terrified. I don't know what it is about film. And so that took a lot of getting used to. And then once we came back in July, when teachers started, coming back virtually, turning on their computer and opening their email again, the training was very similar to what you guys see. When you log into Google Classroom and you have an assignment, we would have check out this tool and see how it works for you, you know, and then write up how you would use it. Or attend this training to get this new tool. And so I feel like we were constantly getting new things thrown at us. Hey, try this, try this, try this. And then it became overwhelming. And then you felt like you had to try a new technology tool every day to be fun and engaging. But I feel like I almost lost a lot of you when I tried to do new technology things, because as tech savvy as your generation is, you still need to not learn technology more than learn what you're supposed to learn. And I felt like it made it so we were trying to teach a new technology tool instead of trying to find the best way to teach you guys. And so I feel like we were almost overwhelmed with the amount of trainings that were being offered. And a lot of them were optional, but I'm one of those people where I want to be able to do cool things. So I would sit in them and I would get all these big grand ideas and then try to bring them to you guys. And it was like, wait, how do I find that? And so it became more of how do I navigate the technology instead of being able to actually learn. And I think that's something that we needed to realize as teachers, that we were trying so hard to be engaging that we were making it more about the technology than about the material. And so it was definitely an effort. An effort was definitely made to make sure we were comfortable, but it was probably a lot easier for me being a little closer. When I was in middle school, we had a computer lab. And so we didn't have laptops yet. And that wasn't even that long ago. I'm not going to even say back then, because it wasn't that long ago. I'm not that old and I don't act that old. So it's very confusing sometimes. But we had a computer lab and we had computers was one of our electives, and we learned how to type. So we learned like where to put your fingers on the keyboard and then not look. So we would cover our hands and try to type and beat things. And so our computer technology skills were very basic. I started learning how to use computers when I was younger. For teachers, who had been doing it before, it's a lot harder to learn how to use a computer when you never learned how to use a computer until you were an adult. And at that point, what do you need a computer for? You already know how to do it, paper, pencil. And so it kind of made it, an extra thing. So for a lot of the teachers that had been teaching for a while, it made it very difficult to try to figure out, how to find that button.
Yeah.
Just so they could teach their kids. They didn't know how to turn on a camera, or, where do you find the record button? And then how do you post it? So,
and I think that's
definitely interesting.
Yeah, I think that's something that students need to realize too, because teachers are new to this too. Like, it's not just students struggling with technology or assignments or being overwhelmed, it's teachers too. And I think on both sides it can be very one-sided sometimes. Like, teachers might not understand how the students are feeling, and students might not understand how the teachers are feeling, just because it's so different. And it's okay to not understand how other people are dealing with it. But it's important to know that you're not the only person struggling with similar things that other people are struggling with.
Exactly. I think that'll be good to be able to see too, once we're back in person, that you'll be able to see more of that empathy, like, oh, I'm not in this alone and you're struggling too. So let me help you. Like, I learned how to do this. If you can help me with this part I don't get, I'll help you with this part. And you can kind of help each other figure out where you were just overwhelmed and ready to quit. And then also I can ask questions where I'm like, so is this actually fun, or am I just being ridiculous?
So as sort of like a final wrap-up note, is there anything that you would like to say to any students or teachers that are listening or watching about online school, or about transitioning onto different platforms and things that are just constantly changing?
I think we're all used to things a certain way. And we had our whole world flipped upside down on us, and everything we knew was gone. And as upsetting and overwhelming as that is, we all had it happen, and we all had different experiences with it. And I think we just need to be patient with each other, but we also need to remember that we're human, and we need to be patient with ourselves. And we can't hold ourselves to these unreal expectations in such a new environment and then beat ourselves up over it. You can't be perfect at something that you're just learning, and it has to be okay. And as someone who does want to do things perfectly, and I want to be a quick learner, I've been so hard on myself, and I've spent way too much time upset and crying and stressing over what a horrible job I'm doing, instead of just finding a groove and just doing what I know. I just wanted to do everything perfectly the first time. And so I got to the point myself where I felt like a failure. And, there were a few weeks there where I thought maybe I shouldn't be teaching kids. And I know that that's not true. I know it's the situation, but I felt like I wasn't doing what I wanted. I wasn't connecting with people. I have a whole new group of 6th grade students I've never seen in person, and nobody ever turns their camera on. And so I don't know if they, feel comfortable coming to my classroom. I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know if I'm making a good impression, and that stresses me out. As an adult, I don't know if I'm making a good impression and if kids are going to like me. And it seems silly, but as an adult, I've beat myself up so many times. And I finally realized that I can't do that, and we're all doing that. And we're all holding ourselves to these expectations of where we were before all of this started. But we knew what was going on then, or we at least thought we did. Now nobody knows anything, but we all want to act like we do. And we all want to be the first to know and have all the information. And nobody has that information, and we have to be okay with that. And we have to not believe that we're such a failure just because we're not good at something right away. And I think that's probably my biggest takeaway from all of this is we're not perfect. We have to be flexible. And by flexible, I mean things are gonna be messed up. And kids are gonna come to school in a week, and I'm gonna do something dumb. And I'm gonna, accidentally hug a kid or give a high five and not use hand sanitizer fast enough or something. I don't know. And it's going to be a learning experience, and I have to remind myself that it's okay to make mistakes as long as I'm learning from them and growing, just like I always have. But we're human, and it sucks, and we need to know to reach out if we need a break, we need help.
Yeah, the whole, I think, like learning point or turning point or just takeaway from everything is, not everything's gonna go how it was planned to go. I mean, with coming back to school, there's probably going to be changes to the schedule or changes to people who are coming online and going back to school. So the whole thing is just, it's okay for change to happen. We just have to find out how to be okay with it.
And going up and down stairs with a mask on.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a whole ordeal.
Yeah, I am so winded by the time I get to the top of the stairs, and you want to rip that mask off because you can't breathe. You have to keep it on.
Yeah.
So it'll definitely slow people down on the stairs, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a good workout though, especially after 9 months of sitting at home.
That's true. We all probably have very flat bums.
Oh, definitely.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. It's a bummer. Haha, a bummer. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about, the struggles of online school for students and teachers. I really, really appreciate it so much.
Of course. I'll see you soon.
I will see you soon in person. Yes. Okay.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
hon.
Bye-bye.